So what gun-related supplies should I stock up on in case of SHTF? Folks, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and that's exactly what we'll address in this video. It's going to be a little bit of a twist, which is my take based not only on my experience, but the experience of others that have gone through similar crisis or an economic collapse in Argentina, given recent talks that I've had here with other Argentines in the channel, like this past weekend, and in other parts of the world as well. There's certain things that make sense. There's others that really don't make all that much. And as we go through this, you'll truly see how these things make sense. Number one, magazines. Obviously enough, you guys know this as well as I do. These things are like cash. You stock up on them and they just go up in price. Time goes by, inflation, and you don't even want to look at prices when things get really ugly. These things are super high value. Now, you have to be a little bit careful in what kind of magazines do you stock up on. For example, mag for a Glock, that will always have value. That will always be in the market. It is true that with current new production mags being affordable, maybe you're not going to be making quite that much of a killing. Let's say you buy a magazine for a more rare HK pistol. Yeah, those things can go for $100, $150. That gun specifically, the P7, man, those things, if you bought like 100 of them back in the day, I think they're going for $150, $200, depending on condition. So magazines are usually a great bet. That would be number one. And for revolvers, you can go with some of the more affordable speed loaders and look at different alternatives that you have. If you find them on sale, buy more of them. Don't go nuts spending a whole lot of money on any of this stuff. Just keep these things in mind and stay alert for whenever you see a sale, whenever you see a good opportunity. For example, I bought magazines for my FAL back in the day, like 10 pesos a piece. Really, in a surplus store, 10 pesos is less than 10 cents today. That would be, keep in mind, the peso is $1 is 500 pesos. So it's nothing. It's really for free. So it would have been a fantastic investment to buy a ton of those things. And yeah, we're talking about magazines that are quite expensive these days. But moving on, number two, the other thing that you want to stock up on is holsters. This is something you want to look into and buy quality stuff. Usually you're going to be looking at synthetic holsters being your best bet. Internal for inside the waistband for concealed carry. Some people carry them outside the waistband and cover it with some vest or jacket of some sort. You do you, whatever works best. I will say this, inside the waistband is sometimes frowned upon by people that haven't had to go that route, but once you get used to it, it's really not all that much of a big deal. Anyway, you want to get yourself holsters, quality holsters, and usually you have some nicer leather ones. This one is a little bit better quality, this one is more so. Both of them work. There's another aspect of this, which is your kind of like your battle holster. Just any good quality cheap holster that just gets the job done and it's not breaking the bank. Again, the same store where I bought the FAL mags, I bought these. If I'm not wrong, I also paid 10 pesos for each one of these. Now, these were for parades and exercises. These are military holsters, but they were in white. I think it were for the Navy or some bullshit like that. Anyway, 10 pesos each of these. Man, I bought a bunch of them and I just bought one of those $1 tints so as to dye it. Yeah, exactly, leather dye. So I dyed it a little bit more brownish color, and I have others. These ones are a little bit more in worse condition, but still good enough for your 1911. And yeah, these were $10 a piece. And for that price, 10 pesos, which is, even then it was like $2 each. Yeah, buy whatever you can find. Buy whatever supply you find. These would be great holsters for SHTF, where you have people maybe walking or working around a farm or a homestead, or even in the suburbs, and there's people that have to pull guard. Whatever need they have, all of a sudden someone has a Glock but they never bought the holster, right? Because they were not concealed carriers. They didn't have it with them. So they have the gun, there's no holster, and those will be the guys that, yeah, you have a solid belt, and more on that later, but this will just work in any sturdy, thick leather belt. You just put this thing there. It's not going to be super fast or tactical, but it's covering the gun nicely. And these are intended for high power pistols, but your Glock fits just as well. No problem there. Just the exact same thing. Just pull it down there and so, and there you go. You have a super handy holster for your Glock, affordable and rugged. This will last a long time. If it's getting wet, make sure you dry it and condition the leather. And yeah, more on that later too. But this would be something I would keep up my eye on. You know, anything that is cheap, sturdy, gets the job done, and works for several of the more common models, that's where I focus my attention. Now, I was just mentioning belts, and that is yet another thing to consider. People will not have holsters, people will not have appropriate belts. So someone may have some old belt from their grandfather or something a little bit more rock and roll, some of those thicker leather belts with, studs or whatever. That could be an option, but ideally you want to have a good supply of proper gun belts. The famous, these rigger belts, they're not exactly cheap. There's some, now they're being made more by some more affordable manufacturers. You can find some nicer, like these Safariland competition belts. These are nice, kind of like cop belts, but something like your tactical riggers belt will work. And these are the belts I use just on my daily wear pants. These just work as well, and anything that you have in your pockets is going to be a lot better contained by a quality, thick, nice belt like this one. So belts would be another one. Again, keep an eye out. If you find a good deal, just stock up on these things. Number 4 would be good cleaning supplies. Talking specifically here about oil. And you can go with some fancy ass oil. I've used WD-40 and 3-in-1 oil for over 20 years. I haven't had any of the problems that people associate with those products. They work perfectly well for keeping your guns clean. My guns are all in perfect condition. I take very good care of them. I make sure I clean them after each use. Maybe not all that thorough cleaning, but I just keep it clean every time I shoot them. That makes things simple for me, and over several decades it has worked quite well. So gun oil 3-in-1. You can also go with motor oil, which has its advantages and also its disadvantages, but motor oil would be even better for some especially if you have a gun that's going to be in long guns, anything that is more demanding. Maybe your basic WD-40 is more for cleaning, your 3-in-1 oil, and those were specifically designed mostly for cleaning and very light lubrication and very light protection. 3-in-1 oil was designed for bicycle chains, keeping them clean, lubricated, and so on. Works okay. WD-40 was designed so as to protect the skin of freaking missiles. So these are things that we adapted to our civilian life, but they have some other intent in mind. They still work. It's all still pretty much basic oil. You could go with a little bit more fancy oil. Ballast oil, this is nice oil, and this can be used so as to condition the leather that you have in your kit. So that's yet another advantage. Specifically with this one, the universal all-in-one famous ballast oil. But again, 3-in-1 oil, WD-40, when I see it in sale, I buy quite a bit of that. You could use motor oil, transmission fluid oil also works, but have a supply of that, because when things get complicated, some oil may be easier to find, but still, it's better if you already have it at hand and don't have to run around finding it. Finally, number 5 would be grease. And here's where it's a little bit more complicated. Sometimes you find grease that people are okay with, the famous high temperature red grease. Well, red is just a color. It really doesn't say much. And yeah, pretty much any grease works. And when you start using a little bit of grease in your guns, you kind of become a fan of it because it stays there a lot longer and keeps lubrication and protection better. Now, if you go down the grease for guns rabbit hole, you end up looking at calcium grease. And if you go even further, you end up with something like this: synthetic premium calcium grease with 5% moly. This is what's used for mining rigs, for oil rigs, steel mills, and it's officially, I think, what Caterpillar asks of you to use in their equipment. This is very good stuff. And one of these, things is huge. You have a ton of grease here, and you need very, very little. I use with a toothpick. I just put a grain of rice is what I use with a little toothpick. Half a grain of rice on both rails on my Glock. That lasts for months. This is black. It's kind of messy stuff, but it's fantastic. This is by far the best grease I think you can put in pretty much in anything. High temperature, low temperature, minimal friction, and so on. And calcium grease for added rust protection. And if not, you can find even food grade calcium grease, which is a lot safer and does a great job as well, like your lubri plates and so on. Guys, that's gonna be it for now. Remember that if you're interested in this stuff, Street Survival Skills, this is my book on the practical skills for when things go south, and especially when things go south in this way, surviving an economic collapse. Both books available in the links below in Amazon. See you next time. Take care.